Hi, welcome back. This is Breakout Lab 4. We're working with conditional statements. This lab will focus on the switch statement using code from the previous lab that we did the if statement. We're doing the same logic, just changing that to use a switch statement for the keyboard input. I decided to do this lab in the Linux CLion just to switch things up, make everybody who's using the different interfaces feel comfortable with doing the labs. Everything, I hope to show that everything should be very, very similar. If you're working in Visual Studio, you'd follow very similar steps. Just like in the Visual Studio lab, we want to start by making sure our Git fgcugl library is up to date. So in our home documents folder, I forgot that in Linux, on Windows it would be in documents. In Linux I did the repos right under the home directory. But go to our fgcugl, and then we want to open up a terminal here, and if you're on Windows you would have a shortcut for your bash Git Bash terminal. I'm going to open up a terminal here, and it works just because we're in a Git repository, so folder. So I'm just going to do a git pull, and it's telling me that it did have new files to pull down. You may not have any new files based off of having done lab 3. There shouldn't be any changes, but this is just for habit. Okay, I'm going to close out of these. All right, so now let's launch CLion. All right, it's reopening up a previous project, so as soon as that's done, I'm going to close that project. And I am going to start a new project. And this will be Breakout 4. All right, and then I'm going to navigate back to my repos folder because I saved a CMake temp file there. I'm going to open that in a text editor and copy this. And then here in CLion, I want to rename this because my template expects this file to be called breakout. And then here in the CMake, I can replace this add executable with that CMake list text. And obviously if you're on the Windows version, you don't have to do this step. You use the breakout template that we created to do the same thing. All right, so I'm going to tell it, let me save, and then I'm going to tell it to reload the changes. And then if I expand now, I have my fgcugl files are linked in. And then I need the template code, and the other thing I can do, I can either use this breakout template that I have to start from, and that's good enough. Let's do that. I'm just going to use this code. So that's why you want to save these templates. I just saved them right at the root of my repositories, and then this way I can just replace this. All right, and let's just make sure everything's building. All right, so that's good. I should be able to run it. It's always a good test to make sure everything's still coming up and running before you start adding new code. All right, so I am going to navigate real quick to my Breakout 3 project. Now, I did the Breakout 3 project on Windows, but I copied in the folder in the source file, and I'm just going to open that with a text editor, because now I can borrow some of the things that I've already done for it from here. For instance, in Breakout 3, we focused on these if statements. I did the vertical, the up and down, and you guys had to fill in the rest for the horizontal left and right movements. And we're going to be doing something very similar. So for instance, I still want these same variables that I declared. So I'm just going to copy them. So I'm in main and I'm copying the block width and height, the block X and Y, and the move mode variable. And I'm going to put them in the same place. All right, and remember, it's easier to start in a clean file for when you do start to have to make big changes. I'm going to shrink down this window here. All right, so I've got my variables in here. Let's make sure this is still built. Okay, it's just doesn't like some of our styling things, which is fine. These are just warnings. I'm just going to build again, make sure everything's building. All right, so what we want to do is, if we look again at what we were doing in the, where did my text document go? Here it is. If we look at what we were doing here, let me expand this window some. Oh, all the way. I didn't want to go all the way with it though. Computers help you out too much these days. All right, so let's look at what we were doing. In our main game loop, we were we were looking for keys pressed on the keyboard by calling the fgcugl library get key. And then if it was the X key, we were toggling the move mode. Else, if it was W, we were doing, we were either doing the increasing the block's Y, or if we were in grow mode, we not in move mode, we would grow the block height, and vice versa. So what we want to do is just switch, we want to change this if statement to a switch structure. All right, so in the main game loop here, instead of we still want to do the key. We still need to get the key, so I'm just going to copy that. So I'm going to copy this line here, and I'll paste that in here. Oop, there we go. And I'm just going to do a comment here, poll for keyboard input. And poll is a technical term for key checking. Okay, so then here we would do a switch on key. Okay, and then our key is an unsigned character. So we can do case statements using character literals. Now the fact that it's unsigned just means that we can handle character codes past 127. If we did not put the unsigned there and we did use some of the higher ASCII2 character codes, our C++ would start treating those as negative numbers instead of the positive number for the character codes 128 through 255. And it's not that we're going to use those. It's just safer when we're dealing with ASCII 2 character codes to say we want to use all of them. Okay, so we can build our case statements here, and so we want to look for W, which is our up direction, and we can do like up key, and then a break. And the Visual Studio will format this back here. You see CLion is putting it here, which is the more traditional to tab it in. Visual Studio is trying to compress so things don't tab in too far, because this break needs to be tabbed in because it belongs to this case block. And then we can do a case for down, which was the S, and then a break. Right? Now we have the X, so we could do a case for X here, and for us that was toggle move mode, move resize mode, and that would need a break, right? And then I'm going to go ahead, and it's best to lay all this out before you start trying to stick code in here, because otherwise this just continues to grow and gets harder to read what's going on. And then I'm going to put here, and I'm just going to copy it right out of here. You guys don't need to do this because you'll be filling it in. Copy this, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to bring it all back to one tab. So this will now be 4 and 4, and this will be a case. And a case. And I'm going to give you guys a hint here. Remember, no break on last case. Right? So for case D, you would not put a break because you don't need one. Now, you see we get down here and we have this little curly brace, and we really don't know what it's for. So it's best if we put something here like end switch key. See if one of the movement keys was pressed. All right, so let me shrink this down again. So what we've done is in our main game loop, if the window's not closing, we pull for keyboard input, and then we check to see if one of our movement keys was pressed. If it was X, we need to toggle our move resize. If it was W, we need to move up. If it was S, we need to move down. So very simple here. We can just reuse the code that we already did. So here's what we want to do. If key X was pressed, we just want to toggle move. Having a hard time selecting the text I want. So here, all right, and notice it's tabbed in 1 because it belongs to this case. If case is X, then do this code. All right, so notice leave white space. So where is, so if we're moving up, it's this code. And then if we're moving down, it's this code. And I should be putting All right. And if these blocks do get long, you can put an end comment here to say end down key and up key. And it's just so that if you're scrolled down here and you're trying to remember what case was this, you can see right here that this break was to end the down key handling. Okay, so let's do a build. All right, and let me run. And I forgot one small detail. I forgot to draw the block. Right, I need to add the draw block in here. So let me go back here and grab the draw quad. And this, of course, is after the switch statement. I have no idea what I just did. Draw a block on the window. All right, try it one more time. Build, run. Hey, there's a block. Oh, there we go. We can move it. Let me hit the X key. Oh. There we go. Finally got it to. Just remember, the loop is moving so fast that we're actually getting multiple key presses every time we tap one of these keys. But okay, so everything should be working the same. As you can see, there wasn't a whole lot of code to write in this. There was just simply a lot of copy and paste. We're just changing out the if then else structure. This if else if else if else if else if else if. We're just changing that structure out for the switch key. Now let's just, for grins, let's add in a default. I think, let's see if it'll, I'm just wondering if it will, yeah, so it auto formatted. As soon as I hit the colon, it put it back in line with the case. I just wanted to see if it was going to do that. Okay, so here there's no break, but here let's do a standard cout invalid key. And then let's actually see what the key value, what the actual key pressed was. And bang. And I'm going to save myself some work. I'm just going to do an escape key for an end line instead of adding in a standard end line. All right, let's build this. All right, and where is that going to show up? Is that going to show up on our window? Figure that. We're getting a bunch of invalid keys already. And I'm not even pressing anything. And the reason why is because we're actually, notice it's empty. It's because we're actually getting the nulls. So, okay, so let's make sure it's not none. So if key and we're going to talk about this in a second. All right, so I'm going to run this. I'm going to build, and then I'm going to explain how I just did if key. All right, because notice we're not scrolling through our terminals. That was the answer to the first question. Where is it going to show up? Notice the standard cout shows up in the terminal window, and that's what we're using for debugging. But here I'm hitting my up and down arrows. Here I'm hitting my WS. All right, I can hit the X. Oops. Oh, and I'm resizing. Now I'm going to hit an F. Oh, look at that, I got an A. Okay, so the problem is it's only the keys, I forgot, it's only the keys that are available in the library. Let me hit the escape key. Look at that, we got an escape character. That's kind of cool. But I haven't handled D or A yet. You guys may have. So since I haven't handled them, and let me go ahead and stop this. Okay, so process finished. So since I have not handled A and D yet, they're falling into the default along with the escape key because we're not handling the escape key yet. We're only handling X, W, S, A, and D in this lab. So why did this work? Well, remember, key is an unsigned character. And if we look at the fgcugl library real quick, and I come down and find the get key function, get key, notice the key is defaulted to a 0. And so if it's not one of these recognized key values, the escape key, X, W, S, A, D, and then the arrows are being mapped to WSAD as well. So if it's not one of those, we are returning 0 because that's what key is defaulted to. So if it's not one of these known keys, it's returning 0. Well, down here, we put an if statement in the default to say if key. Well, if my key is 0, 0 is false, and I won't go in here. So I'll only go in here if key does actually have an ST2 character code above 0 in it. And so I could say if I have a key that and it wasn't one of the ones I've handled so far, then print out this invalid key. So if you've already handled A and D, the only key you have left is the escape key, which showed that funky non-printable character code because it doesn't have in that value, it doesn't have a character that it can display. All right, so that's our lab. You don't have to do the default handling. I just wanted to show that. Remember, if you do the default, you don't put a break in the default, but you would have to put a break in your last case before the default so that if it's a D, you break out and skip the default. Okay, that's the lab. I hope you enjoy these labs and look for lab 5 coming up where we're going to introduce a header file.